BruCast is back, baby.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bruno, and welcome for another episode of BruCast. Today's episode number 8. For today's episode, we have a special guest. Of course, we always have a special guest. And today's guest is Sam. Sam is a Kazakhstani who left home to study game design. He has lived in several countries, including Kazakhstan, of course, Russia, the Netherlands, and now he lives in Germany. He has a keen interest in politics and history. There you go. That's our guest for today. One second. And before we start the podcast, we have some sponsors, as always. So the first official sponsor is BruCast. Yeah, and that's for a good reason. We now have a store, official BruCast merch. So you can jump in at brew-cast.com/shop and check it out. So our store is packed with tons of awesome goodies, from t-shirts to stickers to mugs, all featuring designs that celebrate your love for the show. Whether you're looking to treat yourself or find the perfect gift for a friend, we got you covered. We put a lot of love and care into making sure that our store is easy to navigate and our products are top-notch, so you can shop with complete confidence. Plus, every purchase you make helps support our podcast and keep us going strong here. So what are you waiting for? Check our online store right now and find your new favorite piece of BruCast merch. Thanks so much for listening to this shout out, and we can't wait to see you in our store. So as I said before, the website is brew-cast.com/store. I repeat, brew-cast.com/store. All links on the description below. Our second sponsor of the day is The Right Frame. The Right Frame is a premium art print online store selling high quality and exclusive art pieces for a fair price. By choosing a piece of art that speaks to your personal style, you'll be able to create a space that truly reflects who you are. Whether you're looking to add a pop of color to a neutral room, or you want to create a focal point in your home or office wall, The Right Frame can make all the difference. With the wide range of styles and subjects available, it's easy to find the perfect piece of art to suit your taste and colors. Taste and decor. Buy now high quality and exclusive art pieces for a fair price at The Right Frame. And by doing so, you support the growth of this channel and an art community which values creativity, excellence, and collaboration. The website is society6.com/therightframe. I repeat, the website is society6.com. The Right Frame. Follow The Right Frame on Instagram at the.rightframe. I repeat, follow The Right Frame on Instagram at the.rightframe. All links on the description below. Thanks for listening. All right, so those were our sponsors, and let's bring Sam in. How are you doing, Sam?
I am doing quite well. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you for being here, man. How did you like your intro?
It's accurate. It's modest. Doesn't touch on any of the things that I've done that shouldn't be mentioned in any kind of public setting, so that's good. It's not going to get me into trouble.
We won't mention those things, don't worry.
Oh, you don't know anything.
Should I know them?
Depends.
Let's talk about it later.
I have to keep something for the next time I'm going to appear here.
Of course. All right. So, of course, thank you very much for being here, Sam. It's a pleasure. We met each other at work at Gaming Minds.
Yeah. Recently.
You joined the studio recently, and you've been doing a great job as if I'm not mistaken, as a QA or game design.
Both.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So before we talk about that, you sent me a short some information about yourself, and the first piece of information is that you were born in Kazakhstan. in the city called Almaty? Almighty?
Almaty.
Almaty. Okay.
Almighty. Can I use that?
How would you say how would you pronounce it with the Kazakhstani accent?
Accent. Currently, the name is Almaty, so with an "y" sound at the end. But when I was born, the name was a little different. It was Almata.
So they changed the name of the city.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember what was the rationale behind that one. I actually think that Almaty is not really the correct way to say it in English, but my English teacher pronounced it always in this way, so I think it's kind of a habit that I picked up from him. Yeah,
Almaty. Oh,
it's the biggest city in Kazakhstan.
is it the capital?
It used to be, not anymore. There are too many. The city is quite close to the mountains, and there is always a risk of earthquakes or how do you call this in English? Mud flow. Yeah, when a mountain river overflows and then it starts going down and then it starts picking up rocks, and those rocks start picking up more rocks, and it's this avalanche of mud and rocks going down into the city. It's not a good place and not a good time.
Whoa, sounds like fun. Dude, isn't that kind of dangerous?
Uh, if you ask me, living anywhere in Central Asia is dangerous. You still have to do it.
How many times did it happen while you lived there, this mudslide?
No, mudslides haven't happened in my lifetime. They don't
Okay.
have. There was a lot of work being done in, I think, the 70s or the 60s to
70s.
prevent that from happening. We actually have a dam in the mountains. You know, like one of those that you see damming rivers. We have one
Mm-hmm.
of those in the mountains in the passage between two of them, specifically to stop mud flows.
Wow, that's
We
so
also have,
interesting.
if you would ever like be in a city that has the same kind of issue, you can notice that the parts of the mountains that aren't covered by vegetation, you know, the places where you have exposed rock, there are like little metal nets around them, so that even if the mud is going to go through there, the net is going to keep the rocks in place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen that before, but I had no idea what it was for.
I think it's for that. You
Yeah.
really don't want mountain rocks to just fall down and keep falling down, gaining speed and friends on the way.
So it's kind of like a avalanche. It's no avalanche, but with mud and rocks, basically.
Yeah, yeah. From what I remember, I think last time it happened was short, not shortly. It was a couple of years after the dam in the mountains have been finished. So it actually like showed that it works. So I think it was like 80s, something like that.
And what causes it? I guess rain, a lot of rain.
Yeah, a lot of rain. From what I know, it's a lot of rain. And oh wait, I think it's also when the we have ice caps on the mountains,
Mm,
not too far from the city, and if they melt more than usual, which considering what's happening in the world tends to happen, they overflow the natural river banks that already exist in there.
mm-hmm.
So that water needs to go somewhere. It overflows. It goes no. You can only go down in the mountains. So that's how it happens.
I see.
I've seen an ecological station up in the mountains. It was like about, what was it, 9 hours, 9 hours walking, no, 7 hours walking. Basically, I've done a hike with a friend of mine, and we went to this lake, which, well, is supposed to be a lake quite high in the mountains. But what we saw is that there was this ecological station, and it had two giant tubes connected going into the water, and they've been pouring the water out of the lake. I presume that was to prevent the lake from accumulating too much water and overflowing.
I see. Wow. Yeah, I actually researched a little bit about Almighty. Oh my God.
Almighty.
Oh my. Okay, your
Almighty.
city, Almaty, and it's beautiful. I saw all the beautiful mountains. Like you're in the city, and it looks like a postcard when you're in the city with all. And it's on the south of the city, right? The south of
You can see mountains
Kazakhstan.
from. It's southeastern Kazakhstan. Yeah,
Okay.
it's near the Ilya-Latau mountain range.
Hmm.
Part of the. I think it's the same mountain system that Everest is a part of. Well, mountain
Oh.
system. This is the offshoot of that system that happened to be mostly in Kyrgyzstan, but yeah, this place in Kazakhstan is where Almaty is. It's been a pretty important location. The general region there. There is also a lake. If you've seen it on the map, you see that there is also a lake not far from
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
And from that lake and from the mountains, there are 7 rivers going around this region, which gives it its name. The 7 rivers: Jete, Su, 7 waters, you can say. Historically, a really good place for any kind of city, any kind of organized life. I also think that an off branch of the Silk Road was also passing by there.
Mm. Hmm. Do you guys have a lot of tourists?
It's mostly internal tourism,
Internal
people from
tourism.
other parts of Kazakhstan. Since recently, well, I wouldn't exactly call them tourists, but a lot of people from Russia started coming by. Well, go figure. I mean, some of them are coming as tourists, but predominantly they're coming for different reasons.
What kind of reasons?
Well, there was immigration out of the country once the war started, and
Hmm.
there was a particularly large wave when the Russians declared a partial mobilization. People who weren't exactly keen on the prospect of going to Ukraine and killing Ukrainians decided to vote with their feet and leave the country. And between Kazakhstan and Russia, we have an enormous border. I think it was something like 15,000 kilometers. It's
Hmm.
ridiculous. And yeah, it's quite difficult to close. I don't think it actually was closed.
Hmm.
So a lot of people went there, several 100,000 people for sure.
I mean, better than dying the war that you do not want to participate, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. How different is the culture? So it's Kazakhstan is very close to Russia, right? How much are you guys influenced by Russian culture? Because Russia is gigantic. But I dare say that Kazakhstan is also very big. I was impressed by the size of it. I researched about it, right? And I was comparing between Spain, between France. Is like bigger than all of those countries. It's crazy.
Kazakhstan is approximately the size from London to Istanbul.
It's amazing.
That's Kazakhstan. I think it was like ninth biggest country in the world. It's just nobody really pays attention to that when you're surrounded by such juggernauts like Russia or China on both sides. That being said, most of the country is steppes. So and the population traditionally, well, the core of the population at least, used to be nomadic, and nomads very rarely have actually large populations. So for this enormous territory, we have at most, I think, 19 million people, about the same as the Netherlands.
Whoa, that's impressive.
But yeah, to come back to your question, we are influenced quite heavily by
Hmm.
Russia. Thing is, we've been under the Russian influence, I think, quite heavily after the end of the wars we had with. There was the state called Jungaria in Western Mongolia. So from about late, roughly from the 18th century and up until now, we've been in a Russian sphere of influence at the very least. We've been becoming piece by piece, partially we've became a part of the Russian Empire. I think we finally became a part completely under the Russians in 1850. After that, there was the Soviet Union, and we've been one of the republics of the Soviet Union. And yeah, immediately after the Union broke apart, Kazakhstan was one of the countries whose ruling classes didn't really want to distance themselves from the Russians. In fact, there were a lot of initiatives to keep the cooperation between the countries going as tightly as possible, which these days causes questions. Kazakhstan is quite heavily influenced, but at the core of it, we are still an independent nation and we are still a very different nation. But the questions of, like, are we an independent nation? Are we willing to assert our independence? Are we willing to assert our independence culturally, linguistically? Since the start of the war, all of that has become sharply more important. Everybody is asking themselves those questions now. So yeah, quite culturally influenced. A lot of us actually speak Russian. We have one of the highest Russian-speaking populations per proportion of the country. I think it was something like either around a fifth or maybe a fourth of the country, something between those two, are ethnically Russian.
Wow. Ethnically Russian. So what that means? But they're Kazakhstani, right? First Kazakhstani, and then
That is not that is one of those amorphous questions that we aren't sure about. We have ethnically Russian people who were born and lived their entire lives in Kazakhstan for generations to come.
okay.
Those ones are generally fine. They aren't, well, again, people are different, but they are not as exposed to the Russian propaganda as naturally the Russians in Russia itself. Still exposed, though. Unfortunately, the Russian propaganda has a pretty large presence in Kazakhstan due to the fact that most of us speak Russian language, or have to speak Russian language, because we deal with a lot of other nationalities. And nobody really thought that Russian TV shows are going to be a problem. And now suddenly we have people in Kazakhstan who actually support Russia in this conflict, which is bizarre. But this is a remnant of how integrated the countries used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a difficult time for Kazakhstan. A lot of important questions are going to be asked right now.
So do you guys have a president, or do you guys have? I'm sorry, I'm completely ignorant on the subject.
We
Do you
are a
guys have a? Yeah.
we are a presidential republic.
Okay.
So a republic where the president has the dominant role in the government. But again, that's on paper. There have also been quite a few changes about that. We had the same president for 30 years up until a year ago. And during the mass protests on the streets and something that is you can characterize as a popular uprising has forced that old president to leave for now, and his and the puppet that through which that president was in power now became the actually fully controlled, fully legitimate president. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very complicated time. So you can say that we have gotten rid of the old autocrat, and now we are not sure if the new guy is going to be an autocrat as well, or if he is going to actually change something. So we are definitely a more autocratic country.
What's the name of the new guy?
Tokayev. The
Tokayev.
full name
Okay.
is Kasim Jomart Tokayev, but internationally you can just refer to him as President Tokayev.
President Tokayev. All right. Well, if he doesn't resign a couple of years, there's going to be another uprising of the population, and the cycle going to repeat. But hopefully, he changed something, right? Otherwise, it's
That's
going
the
to stay in this cycle forever.
Well, that's what we're afraid of, because even if he doesn't, a lot of us understand that we do not have the pleasure of having a Western country at our borders who is going to support us. So for Kazakhstan, the price of weakness that would undoubtedly come with a period of chaos that usually comes with these uprisings. For us, that's very dangerous because our neighbors are not exactly good people. Our neighbors are China and Russia and other republics in Central Asia, but those aren't quite hostile to us. But being weak and bordered by those two giants is, you gotta think twice before doing that. Plus, the country is in crisis as it is. Having one guy basically at the head of the government and continuing the old corruption system, you can see the same pattern in most other post-Soviet countries: rampant corruption, oligarchy, that kind of stuff. It's quite damaging. And what we see now is the country is economically is not doing all that well because having the same old guy in charge for 30 years who really lets corruption flourish is not good for your country.
Wouldn't be that called a dictatorship if the guy is on power and he doesn't want to leave?
It would, but Kazakhstan is more of a rule of law country compared to places like Belarus, for example. Belarus is a dictatorship.
Okay.
With Kazakhstan, it's been more. There was never a need for them to show their true colors, but it's far, far from actually a democratic country.
I see. Whew. Um, when you were talking earlier about the Russian influence, I was thinking about the situation in Brazil and how the U.S. heavily influences Brazil. We have no European, maybe a little bit, but almost none European influence at all, or any kind of other influences besides U.S.
No, you don't keep up close ties with Portugal.
I wouldn't say so. No, I wouldn't say so.
So you
Basically,
kicked them out and you told them and never come back.
basically, yeah. Even our Portuguese, we don't consider Portuguese. We actually have a specific name for it. It's Portuguese from Brazil. It's a different language.
Yeah, I mean, because if you put it in the same umbrella as Portuguese, then technically there are more people speaking Portuguese in Brazil than in Portugal itself.
Did you know that as Brazilians, we can understand the Portuguese from Portugal, but the other way around is not true. If you speak Brazilian Portuguese to people from Portugal, they huh? They can't understand it. It's so funny.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
weird.
because the people who lived in Brazil had the need to understand the original, the mainland Portuguese, but very few people in Portugal itself actually had the need to understand the Brazilian Portuguese. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So during my research, I also noticed that below Kazakhstan, there's a lot of other countries: Uzbekistan,
Yeah.
Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and I start
Also,
wondering.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. So I gotta represent my brothers.
All right. So you have a good relationship with those other countries.
No.
Okay.
Okay, no. Me personally, I have a good relationship, but
Okay.
politics in Central Asia are, well, we're not hostile to each other openly, but it's a difficult region. And for example, Kazakhstan specifically puts a lot of effort into not having conflicts with anybody ever at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you kind of can't really afford conflicts when you're surrounded by Russia, China, and, well, basically you win a lot more from not having friends, let's call it that way. Between people there aren't that many conflicts, but I have also, I would be lying if I say I haven't noticed any enmity between the way certain Kazakhs, for example, refer to Kyrgyz or the Uzbeks. But I never supported that. And in my family, in my larger friend group back home, nobody really considers it as anything good to just not to not respect other people from republics. The closest to us are the Kyrgyz, ethnically and linguistically, but the relationships between the country, like on the government levels, relationships sometimes are a bit, how to say, not as friendly as they could have been or arguably should have been. It's a difficult region with a lot of history, and it's also a region that is still recovering from colonial and Soviet influence. We all understand that it's there are a lot of scars, a lot of wounds that still either still hurt or can be reopened very quickly. So gotta be careful.
Yeah, those things take time. I know. I mean, we are in Germany right now, and I know some Germans who are still, of course, affected by the Second World War. And how many years ago was that? A long time ago. But those things, they take time to recover, like generations. It
Yeah.
takes a while. Yeah.
For example, going back to the Russian influence in Kazakhstan, and we have a large proportion of people who are ethnically Kazakhs who are loyal to Kazakhstan, culturally Kazakh, but they speak better Russian than Kazakh because Russian is the language of international communication in Kazakhstan. And if, for example, you were born and grew up in a setting where not everybody, where you're surrounded by other nationalities, for example, you're surrounded by the Russians, the Chinese. Like in my school, I was friends with I had friends who were Jewish, Belarus, Russians, Chinese, and Russian just kind of naturally works right now as the language of international communication. So people who grew up in that setting would speak better Russian than Kazakh. The situation is changing a lot, but yeah, it'll take some
Does
time.
does Kazakhstan also use Cyrillic as the alphabet, or
Currently, the Kazakh language uses the Cyrillic alphabet, but we are in the
Cyrillic?
process of transitioning to Latin.
Okay. How this process going?
You can if you are. I don't know about other cities, but in my hometown, you can already see that a lot of the store, how to say, uh,
Shops?
a lot of shops already have their banners written in the Latin version of the Kazakh language.
That's so
You see it
interesting.
used occasionally, you see it used on the internet, but I wouldn't say that it's going as successful or as deep as it should be going. Not as fast, right? Not as fast as it should be going, because predominantly people who write stuff in Kazakh would still write it in a Cyrillic version.
And I guess what is pushing all these changes is a more independent culture, right? You guys want you to feel more independent from Russia.
Yeah,
I would,
there is clearly a desire for that. The whole thing with the changing the language, actually changing it back to Latin, because Kazakh language, well, it didn't have a written alphabet for a long time. I believe, we used Arabic, and we used at the different times we used Arabic, Cyrillic, and Latin. And Latin was the one that actually stuck for a while, but it was the end of the Russian Civil War. The communists won, and sorry, but for our convenience, you're gonna have to write in Cyrillic now. I think that's also the same policy that gave us the Cyrillic version of the Polish alphabet at the time, which is now happily done and dusted. But yeah,
so I guess you learned both at school, like both
at
Cyrillic
school,
and
three languages. Oh, you mean the version? Right
yeah,
now, I don't know if they switched to teaching people the Latin version of Kazakh in school, but when I was in school, I learned the Cyrillic version.
only the Cyrillic version.
Cyrillic version only started being discussed in 2014 after Russians started after the Russians invaded Ukraine. Let's go
Mm.
fix their own names, and illegally occupied Crimea. We all at that moment realized that all of that talk about the Brotherhood of Nations and yada yada is like, yeah, sure. But we also find ourselves in a place where we cannot openly say that we are against Russia because our geographic situation forces us to sacrifice some of our pride and not say things that we would otherwise really want to say, because the price of making an enemy out of, for example, Russia or China is extreme, and we
Yeah.
are not a very strong society. It's 19 million of us spread across several hundreds of thousands kilometers. I don't remember what's the territory of Kazakhstan, but it's a ridiculous territory,
It is.
and there
It's
are very
big.
few of us. And we really do not want to lose any of it because it took a lot of blood and sweat and effort to keep what we have as it is. So forces us to be clever and a bit more subtle about these things, which is why, for example, we started the whole process of changing the alphabet from the Cyrillic system to a Latin one. Ideally, should bring us closer to Turkey, and I think Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. Forgive my ignorance, but I think either Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan have gone through that process of Latinization of their alphabet,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's going to make communication a bit easier.
I see. So there's a precedent. So you're like trying the same strategy that other countries did, and it worked for them. So you're kind of trying to do the same.
Yeah, in
Okay.
general, when it comes to mentality, currently, Kazakhstan, well, historically, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan didn't really innovate a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
We prefer to sit back and wait for somebody else to try and then learn from their experience.
Well, that's
We did
clever.
that. I mean, there were other people, rushing to the finish line, so we decided to take it a little easier. Anecdotally, when the Soviet Union actually broke apart and all the republics were leaving, Kazakhstan was the last republic to leave the Soviet Union. So
Mhm.
there was technically a week of time where the entirety of the Soviet Union was Kazakhstan.
Whoa. Oh, wow.
Same with currency. We piggybacked over the ruble for quite a while before introducing our own currency.
Which one? What's the name of the current currency?
Tenge.
Tenge. All right.
Yeah.
Sam, I have a kind of weird question. So, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan. What's up with all the stan? Does it mean something?
Yes, stan means land of.
Land. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
All of a sudden. It's a more popular. I think this comes from the Iranian influence. I might be wrong with that, but I think this comes from the Iranian influence. Historically, in the region of Central Asia and around Iran and around Pakistan, Iranian culture and Iranian influence have played a really significant role. And like their language also played a significant role. So, Stan. All of those countries have been, well, Kazakhstan have never been a part of any kind of Iranian state, but we have been influenced by them.
All right. So, from what I understand, you grew up in Kazakhstan. You were raised there, and when when came time to choose a school, you actually went to the entrepreneurship school. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah. It wasn't exactly my decision. Naturally, my parents did that. But they knew that school to be a good one. They knew
Mhm.
that they had the finances to, you know, put me in a private school,
Mhm.
and the higher focus on economics. Well, it's a good education regardless of what happens in life. But the general overall quality of the school has been more important than the actual focus on entrepreneurship or economics.
Okay. Is there anything specific that you actually learned there, and you're like kind of happy that you learned it? Because
I mean,
I'm talking from place that I just attended like a normal school. I know some people they went to like more focused school, but I have no idea how this experience is.
it would be hard for me to compare to other schools since I haven't
Okay.
actually gone to others. Well, I have been in a different school, but I've been really small at the time, so I don't have much memory from that.
Okay.
The overall quality of education was quite good. Well, the most important, the most actually impactful ones have been the English language,
Mm-hmm.
because our English language teacher mercilessly hammered and forced us to learn the logic by which the time, like the sentences talking about the future, this like present
Mm-hmm.
perfect, past perfect, present continuous. I don't remember it now, but it's like there is like this is one of those things that I would never forget.
Your
And
English is great. You're doing great.
I've been working a lot on that, but the school gave me a very solid starting point from working on my English. It gave me a very solid mathematics education, even though I never really liked it. I
Mm-hmm.
preferred algebra over geometry, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a very solid education.
Okay.
Literature, Russian language, always excelled at those.
Mm.
History, effortlessly excelled at that one. Economics have been difficult, but I think that's the one that has actually been quite valuable because I still understand
Mm.
quite a bit of the language. And when people talk about economics, it generally takes me less research to be able to look through a text and see at least something that they are talking about.
Yeah,
And they
that's what
also,
I'm talking.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and the whole thing about entrepreneurship that was stressed, and that talks about initiative, it talks you about documentation, personal responsibility. These things have been quite important, quite useful.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like entrepreneurship, economics. I didn't learn anything about that. For me, that's kind of alien. Uh, and it's kind of weird that we don't learn that by default in the normal school because we kind of live in a capitalistic society. I would say it's kind of important thing to learn early on. So that's
Well,
actually cool.
I would also agree that economics should be
Yeah.
taught as one of the key subjects because economics is one of those things that are dry and boring and difficult, and very few people who are usually very strange or extremely smart would do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it perfect for school because when the child is in school, they can't really go anywhere. So if you have to hammer some knowledge into a kid, you might as well pick economics to be one of those things. But it's the school system. It always has difficulties.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Sam, 1 second. I need you to check the door. Give me 1 second, please. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. That's the price to pay for doing lives. Things happen. So we're back. Hi, Sam. So
Hi.
we're talking about your entrepreneurship skills and how was this specific school experience? How did it went? So you told us that it wasn't actually your choice, but I guess you're kind of happy that you did it because
I mean,
that's
I
quite a
mean, I was
skill,
like,
man. That's quite good. That's good.
I wouldn't say that I remember much from it, but there was
Oh,
useful knowledge in there.
how long did you stay there? So I guess until until it was time to go to university.
Yeah, I finished my what's it called, secondary education. In when you finish school, it's secondary education, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I finished my secondary education there, and then I went to Moscow to do game design. Well, I actually
Which
I went there immediately after, literally after my prom. I caught a flight to Moscow because things were already in motion at the time. Those have been crazy 3 days of my life because the day before my prom, I had to stay up late to finish a little game that I made. I made a little 2D platformer
Mm-hmm.
as a they had a competition,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to do something. You had to either make some art or make some code, and I was like, well, I can't draw and I can't do code, but I can make a game. I can try to
How?
make a game. Well, I went to the internet, I looked for a free game making engine, I downloaded it, and I spent the next several months trying to make a platformer. And I
Mm-hmm.
sent exactly that. And I figured, well, they never mentioned about sending them a game, but it's a game design program. I should be able to go through with the game. So I had to stay up late, send them that, and the next morning I had to help my mother with organizing the prom because she was leading the parents, like the little group of parents that were actually helping with the organization. Then there was the whole prom thing. At the moment I came back from the prom, I changed my clothes, I packed my things, and 3 hours later I was on a plane to Moscow, reading on my phone through the history of arts and history of architecture, because I was going to have a verbal exam on these things. And the moment I got to Moscow, I had some breakfast, and in an hour, there was the first exam. Then sometime later, there was the other exam over the phone. Then I had to walk to the university building in Moscow and pass an English language exam. And it was a crazy day, a crazy couple of days.
Wow, dude. And
I got there with a discount.
so you got a discount because you were good at the exams?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
what really helps me is the fact that I wrote like a 3 hour expected 3 hour English language test
Mm-hmm.
in like half an hour.
Oh wow. I'm telling you, your English is great. So, what pushed you to go to Moscow exactly? So you finish school, and the next day you were on this plane to
Oh
Moscow.
no! I
No, no,
was
no.
the whole thing about going to Moscow was in motion way before that.
Oh, okay.
You see, I have gotten quite lucky. I knew exactly how I want to earn my money or how I want to try to earn my money by the time I was already 15. And I never really strayed and never really doubted that course, which
Mm-hmm.
gave me a lot of time to work on, to make a plan and work through that plan. I had two objectives. Objective number one is to find a way to build my life in Europe because I
Mm-hmm.
had specific reasons for that. And number two is try to get good at game design and earn money that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the English language comes from that. I spent quite a bit of time taking additional English language lessons. Well, not just for education. Like most of the internet is written in English, and if you want to see all the cool stuff, you gotta go to the source.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm sorry for my ignorance. So, Kazakhstan is not considered part of Europe. So, it's considered part of Eastern Europe. How would you
That's
say?
a bit amorphous. Depends on how you count. Well, usually, for most intents and purposes, Kazakhstan is not a part of Europe.
Okay, yeah.
If you count Europe geographically, like if you
Hmm.
count the edge of Europe as the Ural Mountains in Russia, then technically Kazakhstan is in Europe because we have the west of the.
But it's not part of the European Union, right? You have euros. No, 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 none of that. Okay.
We're quite far away from that.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
are a part of our region is Central Asia.
Central Asia. All right. That's what I
I
was looking for. Okay.
Yeah, I find it easy to talk to people from Eastern Europe, but that's because there are a lot of common experiences. You know, I kind of understand their generation quite easier.
Hmm.
Again, we were all part of the old. You know, some of us some of us like if we were born one generation earlier, we would have been born in the same country. So
Yeah. So going back to your life plan. So you're very early on. You're like decided on what you wanted to do, how you want to earn your life, and how this came to be. I guess you're a fan of video games from an early age.
well, that was definitely the case, but
Okay.
I there were a couple of things that I decided for myself. Number one is that I see a lot of people thinking about their future, and they are like, I want to earn money, I want to go to marketing, I want to go into economics. And to me, that sounded like the most boring thing you could do with your entire life. I I knew for a fact that I would be deeply unhappy if I would, you know, if I would choose that path for myself. And I wanted to be happy as well as moderately well off. And I figured that, money like there are some places where you can earn more money than in other places. Naturally, I would be earning a lot more money if I was working in an oil industry right now. But you also kind of have to like what you're doing, because another way of earning more money is to get more responsibility and just get better at the things that you are doing. So I just figured I need to pick something that I like, that I can tolerate working on for the rest of my life, or at least for the next 20 years. So I narrowed it down to a couple of things that were of most interest to me. It was the study of history, the study of philosophy, or video game design. And I figured that history and philosophy, I have interest in these things, but I can continue my interest in these things regardless of what happens. But with the game design, if I don't pick it right now, I'm just going to lose interest after a while completely. And it's not that bad of a career. Yeah, it's not very well protected, and people don't exactly pay you a living wage, but it's challenging, it's interesting, it's exciting.
It is, and there's always something new in the game industry because it's part of technology and consoles. And there's after
Yeah.
5 years, there's always a new console, and there's always a new technology, and now there's AI, and so it's a very alive. I would say it's very live
Dynamic.
industry. Dynamic. That's the word. Dynamic. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's always something happening. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I agree with you.
That was so alluring about it. It's not repetitive. I could not fathom the idea of doing something repetitive for a year, much less, several dozen years. No, awful.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, we just live once. If you hate what you do, you're gonna have a miserable life. So,
I mean, some people have a different philosophy on that, and respect to them. Some people just say, I do what I have to do, and then my actual life is outside of my work. That's perfectly fine. I just didn't want to have like this separation between work life and what's actually interesting to me.
have you seen this TV show called Severance? I think it's called Severance.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's Severance. It's very interesting. So it's exactly about that what you're talking about. It's a it's a TV show where people hate their jobs, and a company created this technology where you can actually inject something in your brain or take a pill or something. I don't remember what exactly, but the point is, whenever you're at your job, you don't remember anything that happened in your private life. It's like you don't know who you are in your private life. When you're to work, there's like a sensor or something that activates the device in your brain, in your work Bruno or work Sam, and that's your life. You remember everything that you did the day prior, and that's it. But when you go out of the office, when you go out into the world, the sensor activates again, and it erases everything that happened at work, and you are private life Bruno again. You're just living your private life. I remember everything that happened in your private life the prior day, and that's it. So there's a clear difference between work and private life. And this show is very interesting that it shows that although you don't remember it's happening at your work, you still the character, right? He still feels shitty at home because and he doesn't understand why, and that's because he's also having a shitty work life, and it's all connected. There's no way to separate it from it. It's a very, very good show. It's on Apple TV, and I recommend everyone to watch it. It's really, really interesting. Yeah.
A very subtle plug in. Ciao,
Pay me,
brother.
Apple.
You're,
Pay
you're
me,
gonna
Apple.
you're gonna get your money tomorrow.
But yeah, I think the whole point is you cannot separate it. You cannot separate it. Your work life, your private life, it's all interconnected. And if you're not happy in one of them, it affects all the others, right?
Yeah. Problem is, it is much easier to say than to actually organize these things. I've seen quite a few people who try to do exactly that and still manage to get themselves stuck in this bad state. And yeah, life is tough. Honestly, good luck to everyone who is still dealing and trying to figure out a more healthy balance, a more healthy organization for themselves.
You need to keep
I wish
looking.
you all. I would wish you all luck.
You need to keep looking. My first recommendation is always do a proficiency test. If you do a proficiency test, it's gonna tell you exactly where you were supposed to be working at, and it's life changing. I remember I did a proficiency test when I was 15. Everyone who asked me, Bruno, what should I do in my life? It happens. People ask me that. Like, I'm not happy with my career. Like, just do a proficiency test. It's crazy. I did a proficiency test again. I always do that. 2 years ago, and I was starting to learn to play the guitar, and it just came back telling me, Bruno, you need to play the guitar. Like, it's crazy. It's like just gives you motivation. Whatever you really like, and whatever you really want to do, the proficiency test just boosted it up, and it makes it clear like what career path you should be following. And I'm sorry, I'm just going through a monologue right here. And something that I learned very early on is that if you do something that you like, no matter what it is, you're gonna end up doing it well. And if you end up doing it well, people are gonna pay you for it. So for me, it's just like there's no question about it. You need to find something that you love. And I'm happy that I found it early on. And Sam, it seems that you also did. So it's
Well, I
amazing.
found I'm a bit less optimistic about that, but I would say find something that you can tolerate.
Hmm.
Something that you can tolerate using a very large chunk of your time doing. And like, I don't know about enjoyment. I like making games naturally, but there are periods of like aspects of video game development that you know I enjoy a little less, and you know it's how to say, but I tolerate it. And at any circumstance, like I know that in general, overall, I am happy with this being a part of my life. I'm happy to be spending my time on this, even in the moments when I am frankly sick of even looking at the video games at my free time. So yeah, I'm a bit more, I guess, pessimistic.
I would say realistic because every job has something that you don't want to do. It's just part of having a job. You need to do stuff that you don't like as well, but it's part of it, I would say.
So far, yes. Never know what the future holds, but yeah, let's not talk about any utopias.
All right. So you talked about toughness, and you also told me that going to Moscow and moving away so far from home was also tough. Moscow was a tough place to study, accordingly to the document you sent me. Why?
Um, Two things. First of all, naturally, where I was in my life when I went there, because I was an 18-year-old guy who just finished school, and I went to a completely different town. Even though culturally it's not that far, like growing up in Kazakhstan, you can very easily navigate yourself within the Russian culture, whether you like it or not. And the study was still very fresh. It appeared 1 year before I applied there, so it was still a bit experimental. And because it was still a bit experimental, there were things like graphic design, which aren't really a part of game design, but they were merged together, so that if the whole game design thing is not going to work out, the students by the end of the program still have the graphic design skills to fall back on in life. So just the fact that this combination by itself created quite a bit of pressure. It's just a lot of stuff to learn, a lot of stuff to do. Then there was an element of competition in the post-Soviet space. I think that was the first bachelor's in game design that wasn't focused on just game programming. So there was quite a bit of competition there. You have people coming from all over Russia, from other republics. There was another Kazakh guy in there. We had a Mongolian guy, and many others. I don't exactly remember. We had people from Estonia, I think, also. So when you have all those people who want to do game design, but there is no place to do game design back at home or anywhere close, and Europe is quite far away, and America is ridiculously expensive, all of those people went to Moscow, and all of those people had a chip on their shoulder. All of those people wanted to prove something. All of those people were going to work very hard.
But why is that a problem? I mean,
because we are compared at the end of every quarter, at least in the
compared.
Yeah, well, not. They say it wasn't like, yeah, we're not comparing you too much, but at the end of every quarter, we presented the work that we've done, game design related work, like some kind of project that we've been working on, in a room full of students and the teaching staff, and we go alphabetically, and we present it, and we kind of defend our project, and everybody does that. So what essentially happens is you see the projects before and after you. So naturally, you compare yourself to everybody else.
But that's more an internal dialogue, right? It's not something that the university is doing.
No, university is very specifically making it that way, because there is an audience with, like, I don't know, 60, 70 people. There was a crammed audience that everybody has to go to. It's mandatory. So you can't just like appear there for just your project, just come in there, defend your project, and then leave. You kind of have to stay there and watch everything else, and that was an intentional decision.
But I would say that's quite standard, right? Don't you need to do that in every university when they're presenting the projects?
When you do it so often, you see yourself kind of falling behind other people, because some people are really good at what they do. You can say, hey, look, I made this little board game and I tested it a few times and it was very difficult. And the very next person after you is like, I already published my game and earned money for it. And I used that money to pay this artist. And now I'm working on a sequel. And everyone's like, and then you're sitting there like, damn it.
Okay, so during university, you clearly had those other teams that were like pushing all the way and receiving more credits for
no,
right?
individual people. We didn't work in teams.
What?
Yeah, when you were making a game, you were have a separate. We didn't have a separate department for programming. We didn't have separate design or separate art. We had everything at once.
Sam, that's not how games are made.
That's how indie games are made. And if you are tough enough to survive in the indie sector, you can find a way in the actual. You can find an easier job in the studio.
I understand this train of thought, but if you're an indie developer who do not know how to work in a group, you're dead.
Well, that is something that they consider we can figure out on our own. Although maybe these days the program is different. Again, things have been shuffled and reshuffled and changed quite often back in those days. I think they are still being reshuffled every now and again. But it was a very fresh program. There was still like misunderstandings between the teaching staff that was game design and teaching staff that isn't game design, and it's a new university program. They still figured things out at the time.
Makes sense. You told me that it was like the first time ever they were teaching that.
Not the very first time, but the very first time was like a year before me. So
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It's normal. So you moved to Moscow. So for how long did you study there in Moscow?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, and this was enough to finish the game design
No,
bachelor.
no. I left. I left before
Oh,
finishing for other reasons. Remember, I previously told you that my main objective was to build my life in Europe.
yes.
Yeah, that never went away. The idea was that I finish my study in Russia and then I go for a master's degree somewhere in Europe. But seeing how things have been working out in Russia, it was 2018 and 2019. It was there was quite a bit of protest activity in the city itself, and a lot of things. Russia was already getting itself into some sort of political issue here and there. Plus, the conflict in Ukraine was still very much going on. And you live there, you talk to people, and you just see that most people were completely fine with what was happening. Most people didn't really give a shit. And then there was, I think, the specific point when I decided that I need to go away was, I think Russians just opened fire on some places in Syria. I don't remember what exactly did they do, but it was bad enough for UN Security Council to convene after that. And I was becoming more and more politicized in Moscow because I was faced with all of those other people spewing opinions or propaganda, or just having other opinions, and it forced me to kind of ask myself, what do I believe in? What do I do? So naturally, I decided to actually watch that UN Security Council translation, and I just saw the Russians just blatantly denying truth, just clowning and just openly lying to the rest of the world in the United Nations. And I just figured, along with a lot of other things, I'm like, this society is not healthy. I am not going to build my life here. I never planned to, but now I was like, I am wasting my time here. And my parents also saw that, and specifically my mother has gotten concerned. So it was a done deal.
And that was before the war.
That was before the war. That was 2019.
Just before the war. That's a couple of years. Man, I don't want to say. You're lucky. You're kind of lucky because you saw all of it coming in a way, right?
The problem is we all did. There were very few people who, well, okay, not war exactly, but the fact that this is not going to end in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people saw that. That's why there were so many protests in 2018 and 19.
Mm-hmm.
Russians knew better than almost anybody else that this is not going to go well. But and they gave it their honest chance. I've seen those protests in Moscow, and I've seen protests in St. Peter's. And if a peaceful protest could have changed something at that time, those protests would have changed something. But it looks like it wasn't really a time for that. So yeah, I do feel like I've made the correct decision.
So those protests they were around 2018. So what they were protesting exactly against?
The slogan was "He is not our Tsar." These were predominantly anti-corruption protests, but
Okay.
the system that already existed in Russia at the time, well, existed for a while at the time, is that corruption wasn't a problem. Corruption was an administrative tool. It was one of the pillars of the Russian state. Yeah. You heard that story before, did you?
No, I didn't. I'm
Yeah, sure.
surprised.
Oh,
I'm
nonsense.
serious.
Bolsonaro would never do anything like that.
Oh, you're talking about oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Russia pretends to be a European country, but the way they do their economics, their approach to the rule of law, they are much closer to Latin American countries that are still trying to figure out how to not be a dictatorship again. Well, Russians evidently failed.
Yeah, I saw some YouTube videos because that's how I learn about those things. About some Protestants being searched by the police. I think I told you that, and the police they were going through the phones
Yeah,
for the Protestants.
yeah.
That's such an invasion of privacy.
Who cares? This is Russia. Your privacy doesn't matter. Your life doesn't matter. You are not a human being in there. Like, this is the same country that 40 years ago used to be called the Soviet Union. And despite the flaring of the freedom in late 1980s, totalitarianism reclaimed Russia, and we knew it reclaimed Russia already in 2018. There was a book by Maria Gessen who already talked about all of those things. And
What's the title
like
of the book?
it, exactly that, how totalitarianism reclaimed Russia. And like one of those things that you see in Europe is that people imagine like the police searching your phones and they find it abhorrent, they find it horrible. But for us, it's like, okay, so it's round two. Let's go. At least it's better than the Soviet times. It's your freedoms are not given to you. Democracy, respect, dignity, progress, you are not promised those things by the falling grains of sand. They are there when people fight for it. They are there when people struggle for it. They are there when generations sometimes put their lives and livelihood and happiness on the line, just so that's, and without knowing if they would see the result of it at all. It's the small acts of internal protest. It's a difficult process. It's a fight. And it's a fight against people who are quite powerful and quite clever. And it means that as for every victory, you would probably suffer a defeat here and there. That's why so many countries in, for example, the post-Soviet space, or countries that have recently have gotten rid of their dictatorships, they still swing around left, right, because it's a difficult process. Because you can't just abolish, like you can't just kill your dictator and expect never to fall into a dictatorship again. No, you can look at Romania. They shot their guy, and it still wasn't over. And Romania is still not in a great place, and they're still struggling, and they still have challenges to overcome. It's a difficult process. Empires don't fall quickly, and those scars would take generations to heal. I mean, again, I don't know about Brazil, but other like European nations have gone through a lot of that. It's just Europeans have gone through that generations earlier. Time flows fast. Time runs faster in the Western world. So you are more removed from that. These things, universal human rights, dignity, respect, you don't even need. It's so basic. You feel that it's so strange and bizarre even when those rights aren't respected. But you are not given those rights by the virtue of your birth. You are given those rights by the virtue of fighting and sacrifices of others.
Yeah. There's this phrase that I hear a lot that your rights, if you don't use it, if you don't use them, you lose them. And Jordan Peterson, I'm not sure if you're aware of his work. Jordan Peterson, he says that every structure of power tends towards tyranny. Every structure of power tends towards corruption, and the way to keep it in line is to have this constant conflict where the mass of people they demand to have rights, they demand to be respected. And if that doesn't happen, no matter what kind of structure power, it can be in a corporation, can be in a country, it can be in a relationship, if you don't constantly question your value and demand respect, you're gonna lose it. It's just something natural and part of being a human being. And yeah, that's that.
Yeah, don't let people bully you after a while. In a way, but yeah, those things need to be fought for, and those things need to be exercised. And there are very few, for example, schools that I've heard of where they teach people how to utilize their right, where they teach people how to call and interact with the police, where they teach people,
Really?
these little
Where's
things.
that? I'm sorry, I'm cutting you.
No, I don't think I have never heard of a place where they do these things, but these like civil interactions are quite important. Actually, maybe they do something like that in like Finland or somewhere else in Scandinavia, like because things for some reason make sense in Scandinavia, but in the rest of the real world, I haven't heard of anything like that.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
again,
That
sometimes there are specific reasons not to teach people that. In Kazakhstan, we aren't really taught a lot of these things. We are taught that we had two constitutions, one of 1991 or 1992, and then there was another constitution of 1995. And nobody quite explains to you why did we need a whole new constitution 3 years after the previous one.
what, you
And
guys
you
have
just kind of
two constitutions?
no, it was replaced.
Oh, replace. Okay.
95 replaced 92, I think it was. And you're like, why? And you just never question it. It's just normal. And then as you grow older, you realize that, a lot of the democratic process has been undone. Constitution of 1995 is the one that allowed our dictator to stay in power for so long because he repealed the Constitution of 92.
I see. Oh wow, man.
Yeah, but like sometimes I'm saying that because sometimes even the school structures have a vested interest in not telling people exactly that.
If I'm not mistaken, schools were created they were created in order to generate obedient workers. That's what I heard.
Sort of. Modern school systems arose during the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
and they were tooled for the skills and the mindsets that are needed from the people who were going to work in the times and economies of Industrial Revolution. And yeah, it's just a system that is that's showing its age right now, because again, we all remember how much memorization was important in our school days. But right now, memorization, though still a very important skill to have, is not as crucial because you can find a lot of stuff on the internet, and the importance of doing research and being able to distinguish good information from bad information from the sources available to you, your ability to process information, not keep it, is more important.
Yeah, but oh man, I kind of agree with you. I mean, school in my eyes was kind of useless. It was all about memorization and then regurgitation. Like you had to bring this information that you memorized into the test, and then after that, that's it. Like you don't need that. You have all the information in your cell phone. But the thing is, even the information that you have in your cell phone, you're not even then you're not always allowed to discern between good and bad because Google is already doing that for you. Google
Yeah, but
is removing a lot of stuff from their search.
it
Have you heard
can,
that?
but Google cannot sneak into your brain and
Yeah,
force you to think in a similar way.
yeah,
That they would never be able to do. They can fool you, they can manipulate you, they can guide you, but fundamentally, they can't force you. Like every conclusion that you draw and how you approach those conclusions is still fundamentally your choice. And, you know, every single tyranny has been undone by the fact that you cannot force people to think in a similar way. On a very basic level, you never know what goes on in the mind of another human being. and you never will have that control. So critical thinking would always be a forbidden kind of weapon. So you can try to foster it. Ideally, schools should foster it. But first of all, it's very difficult. And secondly, why? A country where every single person is a critical thinker is surely going to see a heck of a lot more chaos.
Did you know that in Brazil, everyone is required to vote? But the thing is, most people, they never finish high school. They never go to university. Like, the thing is, politicians in Brazil, they expect that the big mass of, like, the most people, the big population, like the, how do you say that? The masses, right? The mass, everyone goes and votes, but at the same time, most of them never finish university, right? And they're counting on that. They're counting that most people are not, how to put that in a constructive way, like, are not scholarized. They do not understand basic knowledge. Like, they do not have the basic knowledge. You just go and vote to whatever is telling the best lies, you know. They're counting on that, and everyone's required to vote. I'm gonna give you an example. I think this example will explain a little bit better what I mean. We had a clown, basically a clown, like circus clown, who was like a comedian. He would go on television and just spill bullshit the whole day just to make people laugh. And Chiririca, that's his name, Chiririca, it's his artistic name. One day, he decided to become a politician. And he was, I don't know what position he was applying for, governor, let's say governor, just for the example. And his campaign was like, "Hi everyone, I'm Tiririca. I don't know what a governor do, neither do you, and that's okay. If you vote on me, I'm gonna make things better." And then he made a joke, and he was elected because he was funny, and because he was Tiririca, and that's how the politics go in Brazil. And everyone, absolutely everyone is required to vote, no exception, and they're counting on it.
That's yeah. If everybody is forced to vote, then technically saying every single voting result has a lot of legitimacy, because when people choose not to vote in the election, the more people don't vote, the less legitimate the election is. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if like mandatory voting is a bad thing. Seems like a good concept to me, but it overlaps with a different issue. I mean, I don't think like the lack of university degrees is really the, like, specifically the solution, the problem here. But yeah, the certain absence of civil, I guess, education, the ability to read between the lines, the ability to think critically. Like, you don't have to go to university degree to be capable of those skills. It's just like, in general, if you have a university degree, it's more likely, not guaranteed, more likely that you have those skills. Again, like, even the smart, like, there are some amazingly smart scientists in the world who would be absolute fools when it comes to politics, because nobody who is smart in everything at once.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, some sort of a, I don't know, some sort of school system, some sort of, feels like an education issue.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not about going to university, but a better schooling system. And that's what they're counting on not having in order to stay in power.
Yeah, parasites. I mean, every institution that exists for long enough is interested primarily in keeping itself going.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, doesn't matter. Institutions have to exist.
All right, Sam. So you escaped the war, right? I would
Well,
put it like that.
not really escaped. That like Russians who moved to other countries escaped the war. Ukrainians who are the refugees escaped the war. I just decided not to build my life in Russia because I felt that things are not gonna go well there years in advance.
Hmm.
So you can say I dodged it.
You dodged the war, um, and then you moved to the Netherlands.
Yes.
And what pushed you to go to the Netherlands specifically?
The university that they had, Breda University, had a good reputation. It had a reasonable payment. So by comparing it with other places, I decided to go there. Well, yeah, I think there were some other places, but I didn't really feel like going to the United Kingdom. I kind of had a feeling that continental Europe is going to be a better place for me, and it was more expensive in UK.
I see. So you applied to the university and you got accepted, I suppose.
I
Did
showed some of my projects. I went
yeah,
for the interview. Well, you know how it happens.
yeah. Did they allow you to skip some of the semesters or some of the years because of your
No,
no, you had to start
I
from the
started over.
oof. Okay, and for how long now did you study? For 4 years, I guess.
This is my fourth year, last year.
4 year. Okay, I see. And you coming to Utah Oslo, it's part of your internship.
Yes.
All right. And once your internship's over, I guess I suppose you're gonna go back to the Netherlands and conclude your bachelor degree.
I'm actually going to conclude my bachelor's degree before I'm done with my internship.
Really?
Yeah, technically I work here until the end of July,
Okay.
and my graduation is I think it's in the middle of July. So I'd need to go there, get my bachelor's degree, and then return and work for 2 weeks.
As a professional game designer.
Still an intern.
Oh man. But with a
But yes,
degree.
I mean, I'm doing this primarily for experience and a degree. And yeah, after that, I'm going to go back to the Netherlands and look for a job there. I've grown quite fond of the country.
They have great French fries there. Great cheese. Have
Can't
you
argue
learned
with
some
that.
Dutch? Yeah.
Very basics. I plan to start like actually like very seriously learning Dutch once I'm gonna be back. So
And
add another language to the pile of languages I need to learn.
you speak you speak English, of course, Kazakh, Russian.
Yeah. And at different points in my life, several times I started learning French, but something happened in my life that prevented me from going through with that after like a few months. So I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna learn that bloody language. Like this is a specter of a thing that like the universe stopped me from doing. So I have to do it.
Why? Why do you need French for?
Well, first of all, I just like how it sounds,
Mm-hmm.
and the limits of my imagination are the limits of my language. And as a game
That's a
designer,
very
it
good
pays well.
quote.
As a game designer, it pays well to have a good imagination. I do want to keep learning languages throughout my life. I want to learn Arabic at some point. It's a very beautiful language, and maybe it would make sense to learn either Turkish or Spanish, depending on how or where my life takes me. I mean, maybe I'll need to move to the United Kingdom and I'll need to learn English all over again.
What are you talking about, man? I thought you decided in staying in the Netherlands. You don't know.
I would stay in the Netherlands, but maybe
Okay.
work takes me there. I don't know.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
you can
Okay.
never predict the future.
I know, man. Especially in the game industry, people are always moving. When I started studying game design and when I joined the game industry, I was like, oh, this is my first job. I'm going to stay here forever. And no, that's not at all how the game industry worked. And I was surprised, very surprised. Everyone in the for the listeners, people who are listening right now, that's not how the game industry works. If you want to improve and get better and increase your chances of getting a better pay and get a better portfolio, you need to move all the time. You need to do 2 years here, 3 years there, and then move to another country and get another job opportunity. And it's exhausting. The good thing is, the good news is that Corona happened. What I mean by that is working from home happened. That's a good thing about it. So more and more the game companies, they expect you to work from home. Not all of them, a couple of them, and it's increasing. So moving from country to country every 2-3 years is becoming less of a requirement, which I'm very grateful for. But if you
It
do
also
work
makes
in
it
the
difficult. Sorry,
yeah, no, that's it. Go ahead.
that also makes it difficult to build a proper social life. If your life forces you to go to a different place every now and again, then that's also all the friends that you are kind of becoming more and more distant to. So that lifestyle, it's all fun and games while you're in your 20s, but by the time you're in your late 20s or in your 30s, and then you realize that your friends are scattered around the continent and you don't actually have any of them in the place where you live, you start getting depressed. And depressed game designers don't make good games.
How old are you, Sam?
Do I have to say that?
Only
I'm
if you want
23.
to.
I'm 23.
23. You're young, man. Don't be depressed. Life is good.
You be born in Kazakhstan and not be depressed. Then you can tell me something. No,
All right.
I'm not depressed. No,
I
not
hope
anymore.
not. You are in the
I'm
BruCast,
not in
man.
Moscow. I'm not in Moscow anymore. So it's fine.
Oh man. All right.
Honestly,
So
the weather in Moscow is gonna make anybody depressed. The weather
yeah,
in the
but
winter, it's awful.
how many hours per day do you have like sunlight there?
3, 4, something like that.
Oh.
It's awful. No
Yeah.
sunlight. No sunlight at all.
Here's not that bad. I think on winter we have like 6 hours of sunlight. Don't quote me on that.
I'll take every hour of sunlight I can get at this point.
Have you been to Sweden?
No. I've not been in any Scandinavian country. Well, yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to Sweden once during winter for 1 week. And let me tell you something, man. It was fun to just see the sun like for I don't know 2 hours, but because I was a tourist, and it was fun just like the first 3 days. After that, it's just I want to kill myself. How people survive like that? It's crazy.
Was it Stockholm or Copenhagen where they paint their houses in different bright colors to kind of compensate for the lack of sunlight?
Do they do that?
I think in some places in Scandinavia they do that. Well, it's more of just an artistic decision, but I would be surprised if it's not motivated by the somewhat bleak outline of the city.
It's a good city though, on summer.
I've heard about it. I thought it was a good place. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Sam. So I wish you good luck finishing your degree, which is almost over.
Yeah.
I hope you had fun studying game design. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring out to the audience?
Before I go, yesterday was 1 year since the war in Ukraine started. So do remember that this is, this is a horrible conflict that is happening, and if it's possible for somebody to help, join a volunteering program, or at least like send at least a little bit of money. Every euro helps for the refugees, for the people in difficult situations. It's well, maybe for most of you this would not be that important, but those people are, and those people in that war are going to impact all of us who live in Europe or plan to live in Europe, and way more than that, Central Asia, Eastern Europe. It's going to have its repercussions. And it's been a year. Ukraine is still standing. It looks like the somewhat totalitarian and very irrespective of human rights Russia is not exactly having a good time right now, which is good to see. Slava Ukraini.
Is there any program in mind that you'd like to make a shout out for?
I think I do actually.
Please.
I don't think I know that many programs. I wish we were closer to maybe the release. Then we could have plugged in the Railway Empire.
That's true. All right. So if there's anything else that you'd like to any program that you'd like to make a shout out for, I can add it on the comments. Just let me know.
All right.
And besides that, I would like to say thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting me and being a good company.
Of course, it was an honor. Hey, Sam, you're always welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Before we say goodbye, I would like to say one more time, don't forget about the official BruCast merch and BruCast store. Our store is packed with tons of awesome goodies, from t-shirts to stickers to mugs, all featuring designs that celebrate your love for the show. Whether you're looking to treat yourself, to find the perfect gift for a friend, we got you covered. Don't forget to access bru-cast.com/shop and get your merch right now. Thank you again, Sam. Thanks, everyone. And I see you again in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.